Hi, Jim from Trek World. Actually, Jim with Trek World this morning. We are just completing our last day of Trek to Nashville, which was my first convention, my first Star Trek convention in probably 30, 40 years. But here we are, my first Creation Con, because the last one I did was actually Creation Con since the early 1980s, I guess. And then what I want to do, though, is I want to introduce the three gentlemen that I have with me. You may actually recognize most of them from previous live streams and events and stuff like that. We have Roger over here, Roger Owen. He co-hosts with me on most of the live stream information. This is brother Mike, Roger's brother, Mike. You like how that worked out really well? And Michael Hodges over here is another longtime supporter. Michael and I happen to live probably within walking distance of each other, but ironically, we only see each other at these kind of events, which is kind of strange. But that's our new world now. Everything's virtualized. I work from my home. I do that. I'm not the most congenially social person, which is may surprise some. So let's just do basic. What were your impressions, guys? I mean, good, bad, not quite what you want. Well, did you learn anything?
Good, not what I necessarily expected. I expected a lot more traffic, I guess you'd say. Because other than a one-day convention, I was in Peoria, Illinois 35 years ago. I haven't been to one of these. And
there's less floor traffic, I think, than previous. Yes. But again, mine was, but, and one of the vendors did actually tell me that when they checked in on Thursday night to set up the vendor room, that he was told then that Creation had only sold 400 tickets to this. Now, that was weekend admission and higher. Okay, so, the gold tickets were like $850. The silver were like $500. And the copper were like $3, I think. Now, what's interesting is the very first time they put them up in the very beginning, the gold were like $550.
Yeah.
And of course I bookmarked it, but then again I was struggling. Do I really want? I'm glad I did not spend $500 on this ticket. Trust me. But you get your assigned seat right in the first row, real good photo op.
Right.
But yeah, it was really sparsely. Anybody beyond the 400, and there weren't many beyond the 400. Were the daily admissions. So yeah, It caught me surprised too. But the vendor did indicate to me, at least in his experience, that this wasn't a disappointment. He wasn't like, this is terrible. And Wesley Ure from Land of the Lost was here, and I actually, when I introduced myself to him, one of the first things I said to him was, I am really sorry. I live in this area and I have to apologize because we fill Nashville many times a year with 100, 200,000 people for events. And so I'm thinking that, if this thing had really been in downtown, it might have actually drawn 10 times as many.
Right.
And so, but Wesley's response was, actually, this is a good turnout. And then later when I talked to another vendor down the aisle a little bit, the conversation came up and I said, well, yeah, no, it's here. We're not actually in Nashville. We're about, for those of you who don't know, we're about maybe 20 miles south, 25 miles south. And the vendor said, well, interesting enough, all of the stops on the tour, Chicago's like really in Rosemont. If it says New York, you're really in like Parsippany or New Jersey. He says all of the Creation conventions like this, the side conventions, are in these little towns near the cities. And so he also was saying, this is, he's not disappointed. He wished it was better. There's no way they made money on this. This thing was a colossal loss of money here. However, as can be seen from the merchandise, I think Roger and some of the others actually bought merchandise from Creation. It's not branded when we came in. The merchandise is not branded with Trek Nash. Like the photo that I published the other day in the community pack that said we're here. It showed you the Star Trek Nash thing that's on our logos. It's Trek Tour. And it's like a 10-city tour. and it is an extension contractually, apparently, of the Las Vegas show.
Right.
So, looking at it as the package, and then also, you know, what they rake up in money for Las Vegas.
Right.
It's not a loss, but I don't really see them doing this again for a while, because I don't think I just don't think the new owners at Paramount, in all honesty,
Right.
They need to start controlling expenses, the licensing expenses,
Right.
and so they might not be as congenial to the licensees over, you know, small things.
Right.
We need to cut corners here and there.
Well, actually, this is my first Star Trek convention, and I'm impressed with it. I mean, I think Jim brings up a great point. You know, had it been downtown or something, maybe it might have had a bigger draw. But honestly, you know, we're from Central Illinois, so it's almost a 7-hour drive for us to come down here. I don't think I would have been impressed with driving downtown Nashville or any downtown Chicago. Scares me as it is. You know, I think that's why they have these in the outer suburbs, is because it's easier to get to logistically. B, there's better parking and better access to local restaurants and things to get something to eat if you're not willing to eat in the restaurant or in the hotel. I think logistically it just works better for people for people from out of town. The other thing is, and Brother Mike brought this point up yesterday, it's a great point, is I don't think, like say if this were Las Vegas, you're not going to have, it's going to be so packed, you wouldn't have the access to the actors to talk to them, to get autographs, to get photo ops without spending hours in a line waiting. So here, you walk right up to them, there's basically very little line, if any, and you walk right up to them, you can, you know, pay your $60 or $80, whatever it is for an autograph. You get to chat with the actors while they're autographing, you get to talk to them, and you know, you have that access and that ability to interact with the stars and the celebrities that you wouldn't have at a larger event. So for instance, like Las Vegas. So for me, I'm greatly impressed with it. I like the fact that it's smaller because I have that access. Well, we're able to hang out as friends and Patreon folks, but we have that access with the celebrities and the actors themselves also. So.
Sure.
This has been kind of a mixed bag for me. On the other hand, the fact that the turnout was rather lower than I had expected when we showed up here made me think that, well, as he was saying that, I mean, I literally walked through the dealer room about an hour ago, walked right by Gates McFadden standing there talking to David Ajala. You know, there was Saru, and sorry, I'm blanking on names at the moment, you know, just there talking with fans. I walked right by Anson Mount's booth. No one was there. I could actually have gone up and talked to him and struck up a conversation without any kind of wait. And that kind of an access to these stars was just amazing
Yes,
to me.
agreed.
Yeah, that was
Agreed.
the biggest surprise for me. It's a side effect, I think, of the size of the convention.
Right.
I was shocked.
Yeah, me too. Me too.
Just, I mean, I actually just, you know, casually struck up a conversation with Saru yesterday afternoon. You know, not even there at his booth, just kind of walking by and
Right.
said something to him, and actually had a conversation with him about his work on what we do in the shadows.
Right.
That's right.
That,
Yes,
that's
the
been a
Empire.
big delight.
If you haven't seen that, it's on Amazon Prime. I'm pretty sure you need to see it. There was a movie version or whatever, and then the TV series. And if you're a fan of British comedy, you got to see this show. It's a good show.
Yeah.
And even if you're not a fan of British comedy, I think you might be if you're a horror fan and you watch it, because it's a comedy. I mean, not horror, but you'll get the point.
Yeah. I mean, the fact that the crowd is light has actually been a bonus for me, because I had a terrible experience at Dragon Con a decade ago where I was literally stuck in dealer rooms where it was physically impossible to move. I mean, I could not imagine how the Atlanta Fire Marshal was allowing this. It was so packed.
Wow.
But a couple downsides to me is I really would have liked to have seen more dealers in the
Yeah.
dealers.
Yeah, I agree
Yeah, I
with
think
that.
there were only two. I think, you know, well,
Yeah.
There were
the
about 3
person
or
selling
4,
the
but
jewelry,
yeah.
but
Yeah.
they get the guy in the corner that I talked to,
Yep.
Yeah,
and then he
yeah.
mentioned the other guy at the other side,
Yeah.
and he mentioned that they knew each other and they travel around their competitors. But
And then there was a pair doing a podcast in the corner. I'm not yesterday. I'm not
Yeah.
sure who they
Yeah.
were. I didn't really pay that much
I
attention.
mean, there was a company selling, cosplay costumes, jackets, and
jackets.
such, and the vendors
really
selling-
good. Actually, I thought the
Oh,
quality
beautiful.
of the jackets were
Yeah,
really
yeah,
good.
yeah. The jackets were nice.
They just didn't have any price tags on them, and I'm because I actually saw one that was almost like a windbreaker, and I'm thinking, oh, I'd like that,
Right.
but there were no prices.
Yeah.
Right.
And I know why. Okay, I understand that. But my, the consumer in me goes, the old joke. Well, if you have to ask the price, you can't afford it.
Right.
So I just said, yes.
Yeah,
It's a good point. Yeah, good point.
The only other drawback that I'd highlight was the programming in the theater was, I actually thought for the base ticket, there would be more to it than there was.
Right.
And what was there, they had very bad sound problems.
Yes.
To where if the actors up on stage moved their hand mic the wrong way, you would just
It just comes in.
have
Enormous feedback. Yeah.
just hammer the room. In fact, watching Anson Mound and Ethan Peck talking, Anson Mound got to the point where he just refused to use his microphone.
Yeah.
It just, he had to use that theater voice and project to the back
And that
of
was
the room.
actually later in the day. Yesterday.
Yeah.
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 So
it
I
was
mean,
late
it's like this is something that should have been dealt with and reconciled
Yes.
Yeah.
2 days before when everybody
Exactly.
set up
Yep.
and
Right.
Thursday.
Right.
But they made it through Friday
Yeah.
and into Saturday morning.
Right.
And Anson's still frustrated.
Yes.
Yeah.
Mhm.
Yes. Yep.
I really think that should have been addressed. And I really would have liked to have seen a little more stuff to do with just the base ticket.
Mhm.
Because really the base ticket got you access, you could go in the theater, you could go in the vendor room, but obviously you couldn't do anything in there. I mean, there was the opportunity to engage with the actors, but since they're here and they're here for business.
Yeah, they're at
Right.
work.
That's
We're,
like-
we're
This
at
is
play
work,
and they're
and
at work.
I feel very reluctant engaging with one of the actors if I'm not buying an autograph or a selfie or something, because I mean, this is their job.
Yeah.
In here, and if I'm not, at least buying a selfie or something, I feel like I'm imposing on their time when
Yeah.
they could be selling an autograph or a photo since a paying customer.
Right.
Right.
I mean,
So-
and I experienced a version of that. I feel the exact same. You and I talked about that yesterday. And because, we're all human beings. They work for a living. And when you see them this way, actually, I have to admit, they're even more so human beings when you meet
Yes.
them
Yeah.
and see them in this kind of ultra small, shouldn't be this small environment.
Right.
Right.
Because it's blatantly obvious that they are no different than us.
No, they're not.
It's just that they do something, I think, was it you, Roger, that asked Anson about the technical complexities?
Yeah, I asked. When he was signing my autograph, we chatted for a few minutes, and I asked him about if it was difficult working with some of the tech in the episodes. With all the high tech equipment and sets they have nowadays, and he said, well, it's really not about like it was before. There really 80% of that is added in after the fact, so there really isn't that much tech.
The green screen, AR wall and stuff.
Exactly. He said, if anything, it's more difficult as an actor trying to act and imagining what it's all going to look like once they add everything back in, at the end.
Yeah.
So, great guy. The other point I wanted to make too is, yes, they are working, but the other thing to keep in mind is just like a singer, if you go to see your favorite band or whatever, they're nothing without the fans.
Yes.
Yeah.
They know
So
that.
yes, they are working. They know that. Yeah. Yes, they're working. But part of their job in working is to interact with us as fans, because the more they interact, hopefully that will generate more paying autographs or paying photo opportunities, things of that nature. So you have to bear in mind it's all give and take. It's all part of the world, the acting world that they're in, is that they're nothing without the fans, and the fans love them, and we love what they do, and the fact that they're willing to sit there and chat with us, and while we're doing paying for autographs and things of that nature. That's all part of the day's work for them.
You know, you bring a good point. Michael, are you native Tennessean? How long have you been here?
40 years.
Okay, so you're longer than me. I came in 20 years ago.
Yeah, actually, my family's been here for since the late 18th century, but
because one of the things as you were talking, I've been here for this is my 24th year. In the Nashville area, we're used to seeing people. We're used to seeing stars. It's not. I've passed Penn Jillette in a mall. You know, I've seen Garth Brooks at Pancake House downtown in Nashville. You know, 2 dozen years ago.
Sure.
And there's an unspoken rule that nobody actually tells us, but we all adopt, and that is we tend to leave them alone.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
And I think that was probably the kernel within both definitely Mike and I, when we see them, even though they may not be surrounded by people.
Right.
We're almost, for us, we're almost conditioned that if we occupy any part of their time,
Right.
somebody might see us and think, oh, they're doing something and go on. But I did observe the reason why you do this sometimes, and that is the vendor that I was at got very animated with me after a while, in a good way, not a negative way whatsoever. But we began to discuss things, the trek in Ticonderoga, and he obviously enjoyed the conversation as much as I did.
Mm-hmm.
You know, I don't talk a person's ear off in a situation like this. There were customers building up beside me and behind me. And at one point, you know, the guy behind me sticks a $20 bill in the vendor's faces. Here, I'm just trying to give you money. I'm just trying to buy something. And I've been waiting here. And the vendor takes the money, thanks the guy or whatever, and then continues to, you know, and again, no negativity whatsoever. This was a fan who had stepped out of his I'm a vendor role.
Right.
Okay. And was talking with another fan and experiencing what we all experience all the time, which is what makes this channel so different from the others.
Right.
But I began to try to find a way to disentangle myself because people were still doing that.
Right.
And so in a way that reinforced my thought jump approach.
Right.
Now, ironically, and this has happened before, believe it or not, I think in Wonderfest, my wife, who you cannot see because she's hiding over in the corner, okay? She doesn't have to, but she is. She's hiding over in the corner. Don't you put me on camera. Okay, my wife is probably one of the perfect Star Trek wives, okay? Because she's not a fan, and but she likes the show, and she pays attention to what I know about the show.
Mm-hmm.
So at one point yesterday, she sees Anson. And she does what I would never have done. She walks right up to Anson and just strikes up a conversation. And at the first part of that conversation, she's talking about, well, one of the things that I really like about you is that, you're from Dixon. And you do come back home. And when you come back home, you are, that you work within the community.
Right.
Okay, so this is like local boy makes good, comes back,
Mm-hmm.
And at that point, he's still, okay, this is, and then she off the cuff says, and how is the baby? And his, not quite surprised, but taken aback, I guess, instantly. Mm-hmm. And he says, and he, he's, well, she's 2.5 years old right now. And then and I remember, this is Captain Christopher Pike, okay?
Mm-hmm.
This is the guy that if we talk to, our tongues get tied and we think of, I can't think of what's thinking. She says, well, it's about time to have another, right? And he said,
hey, just wanted to call and say thank you so much for such a great job you do on Trek World Channel. I've been watching since you started the channel, and as someone who has seen every episode of the original series and TNG probably 30 times each, I've learned so much from your channel about the backstory of Star Trek and how it was made and the drama between the creators and the actors. I felt like I knew a lot of this stuff, but watching your channel just made me realize I literally knew nothing about my favorite series of all time. So thank you so much. Love your channel, and I hope you continue to preserve all this great information for posterity online. Thank you.
Okay. And he was wonderful. And they had a conversation like you and I would have if we just happened to bump into each other and go, I remember you at Kroger, all right? She has none of the pretense, all right? And it's interesting to hear these encounters, and there's one other I'll tell you in a second, but it's interesting to hear these encounters from her because she's an odd duck at the conventions in that if there are women in these conventions, and there are wives here, there are families here, you know, they participate in the cosplay, they're dressed up, but normally when you see a wife here, she's another hardcore fan, okay? So a hardcore fan does not come up with that conversation.
Right.
You know, my thought is, and the reason he probably looked a little bit taken back was, my thought is he's thinking fan in the beginning.
Right.
And then at some point in his mind it switches and he's thinking, okay, not fan, this is somebody who lives locally,
Right.
who has somehow heard that I'm from Dixon. Because these are the kind of questions that happen within a community.
Right.
Now, she
right.
knew about the baby because when the baby was born, he actually did put a picture on Facebook and sent it out over Twitter. A beautiful baby. And he said, look, I know normally you don't do this kind of thing. You don't want your children on this stuff.
Right.
But he says, this is so proud I had to share it. So she knew about the baby not because she was local, but the connection between you're from Dixon, you come back, you treat Dixon. I know he follows the high school teams and stuff like that and leaves comments for them. You know, that's that kind of interaction that I think was responsible for his take aback. Now, another interaction happened, which is not quite the same thing, but again illustrates the beauty of not necessarily being a fan. She sees Doug, Saru, she sees Doug with 3 fans. And these 3 fans are camping. And so she just walks up and she taps Doug on the shoulder. And she says, I'm sorry, I don't mean to interrupt. Just want to tell you how much I love what you do, you know? And, you know, and I just love what you do on the show. And then she made a comment along, don't let them make you do things you don't want to do. You know, I don't think maybe he grasped that at the beginning, but I mean, we've heard, you know, the heavy makeup appliances, the shoes that he wears are just, you know, he goes through a lot for his craft.
Yes.
He was an exquisite gentleman. And then as she got ready to leave, he took her hand and he kissed her hand the way Saru does with the Romulan Vulcan president.
Vulcan, yeah.
Okay. That's a magic moment.
Oh, absolutely.
She tells me about this, and 1, I'm wishing I'd seen it. 2, I wish I caught it on film. Because that just doesn't happen.
Right.
In situations other than this. And there was one last thing with Anson. She gets ready to walk off to Anson. He stops her. I'd like to shake your hand. He stops her. In what planet are we living in?
Right.
I love the channel. We have people who don't like New Trek, and I understand that. And I respect everything they find fault with on New Trek, because you know what? There are things about New Trek I despise too. There are things about all sorts of things I despise, and my opinion counts, so does yours. But I have to tell you, the cast for Strange New Worlds is the best feeling cast
Agreed.
I've seen since The Next Gen.
Yep, agreed.
I mean, we love the original cast, but we know there was no family atmosphere with that. It never has been.
Right.
We see pictures on Facebook. The Next Gen cast meets 2-3 times a year for dinner, 25, 30 years later. You know, Picard 3 is a gift to them from Patrick Stewart that we got to share. This cast, Anson, for me, I wish he were my dad. And it's odd because he's so much younger than I am, okay?
Right.
But the issue is a lot of us looked up to Kirk as a role model.
Right.
Anson has that distilled essence in him.
I agree.
That just makes you respect him. I don't know a whole lot about the man.
I don't either.
But what I feel makes me think he's a saint, Mother Teresa. And I realize, not true. But you know what? I don't care.
Right.
That's the feeling. Ethan Peck is Gregory Peck was his grandfather. From you, those of you who don't know, Ethan has a tremendous acting background.
Yes.
Jeb Bush, a rather tall, auburn,
Haired,
not
beautiful
short
woman,
blonde
beautiful
hair, by
lady.
the way.
Yes.
When we did the cast photo, it took me a second. I figured out who she was by process of elimination.
Yeah.
Because everybody else looked exactly what I thought. Yes,
Yes.
definitely. Very talented people, lovely people.
Yes. All the ladies are gorgeous. I mean, they're and the entire cast. They're all gorgeous people. I mean, in real life, just like they are on television. I mean, they're beautiful people. I think the thing is, I think what Jim's trying to instill here is the fact that our impressions before we go to these things sometimes are that the actors are untouchable, unrelatable. Maybe snooty or things of that nature. As you're in the back of your mind, you would have a preconceived notion of what an actor is going to be, maybe stuck up, that type of thing. And then we're astounded when we go to these and we're able to talk to them and find out they're very grounded people, just like we are.
Yep.
And the stories that you're relating about, being able to chat with them about everyday occurrences and things, family and things of that nature. I think the good actors are grounded in where they came from, and they give back to their community, things of that nature. That makes an actor grounded in what they do, because they have to pretend in everything in the roles that they portray, and the fact that they're grounded to where they came from, and they know where they came from, and they appreciate that still, and they still relate to that, makes them wonderful people to be around and to associate with when you go to these conventions. So.
Okay, we're gonna get ready to wrap up, so I want to tie up everybody's. There's probably not gonna be a whole lot of editing to this.
Yeah.
Normally I do quite a bit of editing, looking, to try to tighten things and everything, but this is a roundtable conversation.
Absolutely.
So this is going to be, we're talking to you live via tape delay, okay? So you'll see this later tonight.
Yep.
And I just really, I want to thank the time that you all spent with us here for this little visit. And one last thing I want to tie into what Roger was just saying. For those of you who are regular viewers of the channel, you know that we are passing through a period of time on the channel where I'm covering some topics that remind us sometimes that our heroes do in fact have feet of clay.
Yes.
And that some of them do fall quite short of what we expect. Don't meet your heroes because they'll disappoint you, and that definitely does happen. My experience here has really counterbalanced that and given me a good feeling again, because I think that maybe, at least from what I see at this point, some of that back channel negativity that we know after decades and we've always known was there in different packets of time doesn't appear to be involved in any of these. We have a lot of hands are upset with New Trek, but I do not detect anything whatsoever amongst any of the New Trek cast or crew that they are having anything other than the best time of their lives.
They're very friendly people. They're
and it's infectious.
Yes, it is. Not just to us, the fans, but to themselves. Jim
The
hit it
girls
spot
dancing.
on. Yes.
In between the photo ops or whatever, they're
The
waiting
girls are dancing around,
for Michael and I or whatever, and they're dancing, and playing with each other.
Yes.
And then seriously, come on, take the picture. They talk to you. It's wonderful. You walk off. And when they did that, it was like they're like kids in school.
Yes, you can tell it's a family. You can definitely tell the actors themselves, to each other even, are a family, and they all get along. It is infectious, and I think the only other time we've seen that is with Next Gen cast. So
I sat in on a Women of Trek session this morning, and it was actually very joyous. I mean, these women, they love Trek, they love each other, they were having a wonderful time, and they were having a wonderful time engaging with the audience and celebrating the diversity of Trek and the progress that has been made over the last 60 years for women, for just in diversity in general. And it was a very joyous session, and it was very infectious.
That is awesome. The one woman I wish that had been here, and this is a plug for her book. If I can find her book, there will be an affiliate link in the video, which is a plug for me. But a non-visitor, has just gotten a book. She was originally licensed to release it through Eagle Moss. We all know what happened to them, but she has a book that has either just been released or will be released on the women in Star Trek. And she had a fascinating journey of discovery with the women that you saw today and others, and I recommend it very highly because of that. Exactly what Michael was just saying.
Awesome.
Anything else in closing?
No.
All right.
It's been a wonderful weekend, and looking forward to the next time we can do this.
So we'll see you on the next live stream and/or watch party. Until then, take care, guys. We've had such fun, and we can't wait to see you again.
Yep.
I gotta go bathroom. As soon as you guys turn that camera on, I was like, oh man.
And it's still running.
You mean the camera that's still on right now?
Yeah.
Are you gonna cut it out?
It could be a blooper, couldn't it? I think it would be
He's
actually-
already got the blooper.
You know what I can do? You know what I can do? You will not be on camera, but your voice is going to be.
Oh man, I didn't even.
You have to go to the bathroom. The last thing you're going to hear in the video.
Oh,
So now let's get up with the fun stuff, like this right over here.